Hey everyone. Every single day, the absolute second we step out of our front doors, we're entering a shared space that is completely built on trust. Well, in today's explainer, we are tackling the harsh reality of what happens when that trust gets broken. We're unpacking the spectrum of impairment on our roads. Now, we all know the golden rule, right? Don't drink and drive. But what does the data actually say about it? Where do the legal lines truly get drawn? And how do modern everyday hazards like taking a prescription medication or simply holding a smartphone completely change the safety equation? We are going to break down the exact rules, the biology, and the penalties pulling directly from the official source material. By the end of this, I promise you're going to see the rules of the road in a completely new, incredibly clear light. Let's get started.
But before we get into the actual rulebook, we need a reality check. 15,000. That is the estimated number of drunk drivers on the roads every single day. Let that sink in for just a second. When you're commuting to work or just driving to the grocery store, you are sharing the pavement with thousands of individuals whose reaction times and judgments are actively compromised. This isn't just some rare isolated issue. It's a daily, structural hazard. The stakes of understanding this topic literally could not be higher.
So here is our roadmap for today. First, a reality check. 2, alcohol limits and penalties. 3, busting blood alcohol myths. 4, chemical impairments. 5, the digital distraction hazard. And finally, we will test your knowledge. All right, jumping right into section 1, the reality check. You might wonder why law enforcement is so incredibly strict about all of this. Well, it's because 20% of all traffic deaths are directly related to the use of drugs or alcohol. That's 1 in 5. And when we look at the enforcement side of things, authorities catch about 25,000 people driving impaired every single year. Now, what's really fascinating and kind of alarming about this data is the demographic breakdown. Get this, a staggering 90% of those caught driving drunk are men, mostly categorized as young or middle-aged. So this isn't just a broad, vague societal issue, it has a very specific statistical profile. That brings us to section 2, alcohol limits and penalties. We all absolutely know it's dangerous, but how does the legal system actually measure and punish this behavior? Because let's face it, the law doesn't operate on feelings or guesses. It operates on hard math and very strict definitions. To understand the law, you absolutely have to grasp this one specific metric right here, per mil. You'll see it represented by a symbol that looks a lot like a percentage sign, but with an extra 0 at the end. Per mil simply means 1,000th. So when the law talks about blood alcohol concentration, 1 per mil means there is exactly 1 part of alcohol for every 1,000 parts of blood in your system. This is the universal measuring stick that law enforcement uses right there at the side of the road. And the law perfectly scales its punishments based on that exact metric. Let's look at the comparison here. Standard drunk driving starts at just 0.2 per mil, which, by the way, is equivalent to 0.1 milligrams of alcohol per liter of breath. Cross that incredibly low threshold, and you are facing fines or up to 6 months in prison, plus a revoked license for a whole year. But look at what happens when you hit 1.0 per mil. This triggers aggravated drunk driving, and the penalties absolutely skyrocket. No joke, you're now looking at up to 2 years in prison, revoked license for 2 years, and you actually have to retake both your theory and practical driving tests entirely from scratch. It is a massive, life-altering jump in consequences. But wait, there is a pretty massive catch here. Actually, scratch that. It's more of a stern legal warning. You don't even actually have to hit that 0.2 limit to get charged. The legislation states clearly that it may be considered drunk driving even if you are under the legal limit, provided you are driving recklessly. The law is designed to punish the impairment itself, not just the number on a breathalyzer. Furthermore, serving alcohol to someone you know is going to be driving or lending your car to a drunk person can actually make you guilty of complicity in drunk driving. You are legally tethered to the safety of your vehicle and the sobriety of the person you hand those keys to. Let's move along to section 3 and see how all of this ties into the physical reality of drinking. We need to do some serious myth-busting about what alcohol actually does to the human body and how long it actually stays in there. Okay, what we are looking at here is the biological descent into impairment, and it happens shockingly fast. At just 0.1 to 0.4 per mil, you lose inhibitions. You start overestimating your own abilities, and your reaction time noticeably slows down. Move up to 0.4 to 1.0, and your vision, speech, and coordination really start betraying you. Cross that aggravated threshold of 1.0, and you're dealing with serious difficulty controlling your body, impaired balance, and double vision. By the time you hit 2.0 to 3.5, the body starts forcing itself to shut down into a deep sleep, and anything over 3.5 per mil brings a very real great risk of coma or death. Driving requires these split-second micro-adjustments, right? Well, looking at this biological progression, you can see exactly how quickly those critical tools are just stripped away from you. So how do you get rid of it once it's in your system? Well, here is the harsh truth. It is literally impossible to control your body's breakdown of alcohol. Forget all the old wives' tales. Drinking strong coffee or taking an ice-cold shower won't actually sober you up. They're just going to make you a wide-awake, wet, drunk person. While variables like your weight, your gender, how fast you drink, and your food intake do impact your initial blood alcohol level, only one thing breaks it down: time. You just have to wait it out. And here's another really vital takeaway. Even if there is technically zero alcohol left in your blood the next morning, you still often feel worn out. That hangover fatigue alone can severely compromise your driving safety.
Now, impairment isn't just poured from a bottle. Let's shift gears to Section 4, chemical impairments. Remember that 25,000 figure of people caught impaired every year we talked about earlier? A shocking 15,000 of them are actually under the influence of drugs. The law takes a strict, zero-tolerance approach to this. Not even the absolute smallest trace of illegal narcotics is permitted.
The source material breaks down exactly why these specific chemicals are so devastating behind the wheel. First, we have stimulants like cocaine or amphetamines. These lead to hyperactivity and a massive overestimation of your driving ability. They suppress your sense of tiredness so effectively that a driver could just fall asleep at the wheel without any warning whatsoever. Then we have sedatives like heroin or morphine. These cause extreme sluggishness. They completely destroy your ability to concentrate. Finally, hallucinogens like LSD. These cause outright disorientation. We're talking hallucinations and heavily impaired judgment. Any one of these effects is essentially a ticking time bomb in a moving vehicle. But hey, what if a doctor prescribed it? This is where a lot of well-meaning people actually get caught out. The rule is crystal clear. You are not allowed to drive if the medication makes you a traffic hazard, even if it is perfectly legal and prescribed by a licensed physician. And here is the real kicker. It is totally your responsibility to judge whether that medication affects you. You have to consult your doctor, read that little pharmacy leaflet, and be totally honest with yourself. If you get behind the wheel while constituting a traffic hazard from prescription meds, you are subject to the exact same legislation as a drunk driver. No exceptions.
So we've covered alcohol and chemicals. But there is a third incredibly common form of impairment that doesn't involve ingesting anything at all. Section 5, the digital distraction hazard. Using a mobile phone in traffic is treated with the exact same severity as being under the influence. In fact, text messaging behind the wheel carries the exact same risk level as a highly intoxicated person.
People are always looking for loopholes with mobile phone laws. Always. So let's look at a direct clarification question pulled right from our source material. Can I hold my phone in my hand if I keep both hands on the steering wheel and use speakerphone? Take a second. What do you think the legal answer is here? The answer is a firm, undeniable no. You are never allowed to hold your phone while driving, not pressed against the steering wheel, not against the gear stick, not resting casually on your leg. Holding it is prohibited, period. But it actually goes deeper than just your hands. Even if you use a totally hands-free device or voice control or a built-in GPS, if the conversation itself or the cognitive load makes you inattentive and creates a traffic hazard, it is prohibited. A complicated, emotional phone call can make you lose focus just as easily as holding the device in your hand. And before anyone thinks they can skirt these rules just because they aren't on a main highway, think again. Whether you're on a quiet rural dirt road, a busy city intersection, or even driving a tractor in a fenced-off private field, the legislation applies absolutely everywhere. It applies to all motor vehicles. In fact, if you're taken into custody for being publicly intoxicated in a totally different context, say you're just walking down the street on a Friday night, your learner's permit or driving license can still be revoked. Wow, okay, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, from the strict math of per mil to the hidden dangers of prescriptions and smartphones. Let's move to Section 6 and see if we can lock in the most critical threshold we discussed today. It is time to test your knowledge. Here is a genuine theory test question directly from the source material. What is the limit for aggravated drunk driving? Is it A, 0.2 per mil of alcohol in the blood, B, 0.8 per mil, C, 1.0 per mil, or D, 2.0 per mil? Think back to that severe jump in penalties we talked about earlier. Go ahead and lock in your answer.
And the correct answer is C. 1.0 per mil of alcohol in the blood officially constitutes aggravated drunk driving. At this level, as we saw, you are facing up to 2 whole years in prison and a completely revoked license that requires testing all over again. What this entire explainer really comes down to is a matter of choice. Whether it's a glass of wine, a prescribed sedative, or just reaching down to text a friend, any compromise to your focus is a choice to become a hazard to everyone else on the road. The rules are structured to keep us safe from those exact choices. So the next time you turn the key in the ignition, ask yourself, are you truly ready to take that responsibility seriously? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and please stay safe out there.